Going to open the meeting right at 7 and do a quick roll call of the school committee members.
Becky Cherniak, present.
Kelly Grady, present.
Julie Mulder,
Heather Moore, present.
And Lisa Brown, present. We're going to jump over the Pledge of Allegiance, and we do not have a student representative tonight. We're going to have 2 public comments, one after what I think you're all here for, and then we'll have another one for after the budget. But just keep in mind that for the budget, we do have a public hearing on April 7th as well. And with that, does anybody have any old business? Seeing none, does anybody have any new business? Seeing none, before I turn it over to Dr. Vieira, which you're all here for, I just want to thank the DTA leadership, Dr. Vieira, Ms. Urquhart, and the school committee members, Kelly and Heather, who have spent countless hours on all of these changes, and they started at the end of July, and so many hours. It's unbelievable how many changes they've had to make, all at a moving target. So I don't want that to go unnoticed. And the DTA's representative and our school attorney. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Vieira.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I will not bury the lead and just come out and say that I am thrilled to announce that we are back. We're coming back to school. The dates are as follows. Our pre-K to 5th grade students will return to school on Monday, March 22nd. That is a week from Monday. Pre-K through grades 5 will be back. Our 6th through 12th grade, middle and high school, will return to school on Monday, April 5th. So again, pre-K to 5 is on Monday, March 22nd. Grades 6 through 12 will return on April 5th. That is full instruction, 5 days a week, regular school day. Couple things just to touch base with people on before we open it up to questions from the committee and for public speak. Principals are going to be setting up, I know Mr. Bell did his today, principals will be setting up community forums and staff forums the week before we go back and the week after we go back to be able to answer questions that people may have. I know this is a change, and we want to make sure that you're informed and you know what's going on, and you have the ability to ask questions and have them answered. I met with principals today, and they're already well on board. They're going to start having discussions with staff, and I know staff is ready to have discussions with kids about transitioning them back. For our elementary kids in K to 5, that'll start happening Thursday, Friday of this week and next week. And those conversations are going to talk a little bit about what's it going to look like coming back, the fact that we are coming back, talking about, having everyone back in the room. So we're going to start having those discussions with our students over the next week or two. Obviously, this might take place a little bit later in middle and high school. We want to start having the conversations with kids so they're prepared, they have the ability to ask questions, and they feel comfortable coming back. For you as families, if you have questions, feel free to reach out to us. We'd rather have your questions answered than have you not know what's going on. So any one of us will be more than happy to answer your questions. So feel free to reach out to the building principals or to myself if it's something more district-based. The other thing to remember is I feel like it's August all over again. We are getting ready to start the school year off. We had hybrid down pat. We knew what that looked like. There were a few bumps when we got started back on September 16th. But we're going back now to full in-person instruction. That means double the kids in school, more parent drop-off. So it's going to take us a couple of days to work out some of the kinks. We have everything ironed out, but remember, we're experiencing August in mid-March. So if you have questions, feel free to ask us. That's why I've asked principals to meet with you beforehand and also the week after we go back in order to be able to answer anything that might come up once we come back. In addition to that, I also have a few thank yous. Want to start off by thanking the school committee. They've been strong advocates since we started this back this summer in doing what's right for our kids, but also making sure that our schools are safe for students and staff. So they've been extremely supportive and unwavering throughout this time. Our leadership team has been incredible. I can be difficult sometimes. I fully recognize. Why are you guys smiling? I can be difficult at times. I fully recognize that. But we have a mission. We have a goal to accomplish, and we work to get it done. They've now planned for 3 different models. We've gone from hybrid to remote, back to hybrid, and now we're going in person. And they've been able to execute this flawlessly, all of them. So I appreciate all your hard work. The community, the entire Douglas community, has been simply remarkable during this. This can't be easy for you. We started this 12 months ago with kids being home. You've had to adapt to several different models of learning. You've had to adjust your life in order to accommodate what's going on. Please know that that's not lost on us, and I truly appreciate your patience throughout this process. Our teachers, our entire Douglas Public School staff have been incredible. What the teachers had to do in order to prepare for this hybrid model was really remarkable. They had to reimagine and redefine how they taught kids. This isn't what they went to school for. This isn't what they signed up for. It's what none of us signed up for. But they had to completely pivot and change how they educate kids. And they were able to do so flawlessly. And thank you to them. They've been incredible. Our secretaries, custodians, and cafeteria workers have been extremely supportive throughout this, doing whatever we ask of them to make sure that schools are ready for kids and for staff. Mrs. Brown alluded to it earlier. The Douglas Teachers Association, their leadership team, in partnering with us throughout negotiations for a hybrid model, and then doing it again for a remote model, and then doing it again for when we had to meet student time on learning, and then doing it again now for getting kids back, as Mrs. Brown said, countless hours, and they've been very supportive. They want what's best for kids, they want what's best for teachers, and they want to do so in a safe manner. So thank you to them. They've been incredible. And then finally, a huge thank you to our kids. The Douglas students have been simply awesome throughout this. They've shown grit, they've shown resilience, they've shown perseverance, they've done what's asked of them, they've worn their masks, they've maintained that social distancing. They've been simply awesome, awesome, awesome throughout this. And it brings me great joy, and really happy to know that in a week and a half, we'll have our K-5 kids back full time. And 2 weeks after that, we'll have our high school kids and middle school kids back. So this is just awesome. So thank you to all those people. We couldn't have done it without you. And I just wanted to spend a few minutes thanking them. With that said, I will open it up to the committee for any questions they may have, and then public speak if needed.
I do not have any questions.
I have a question, but to keep it short and sweet, I just want to echo Dr. Vieira's sentiments. I'm just kind of proud to be from Douglas, and I really am grateful to everybody who has done some of this heavy lifting, and it's just everybody. Thank you to the DTA for being open, and it's just, I'm excited, and I'm grateful to everybody who's had a hand in this. So thank you. And thank you, Dr. Vieira. You neglected yourself. It was crazy to be hiring a superintendent in the spring, and you've just risen to the occasion. And there's been a billion ways to slice this problem, and the way that you have led us in dealing with it has really been remarkable. So thank you.
Thank you.
Just have a quick question, because I know a couple people are asking this. Why do the younger kids get to go back on the 22nd and the other kids have to wait 2 weeks? Is there a specific reason?
Sure. So the guidance that came out of DESE was to start with the elementary schools and then work your way up to the high school. So we started with the elementary kids. and we're bringing them back first. And the 2 weeks time gives us the ability to spend the past week and a half, 2 weeks prepping to have elementary come back. That, again, as we said, we've had to move desks back into classrooms. We've had to be able to put tape markers on the floor. We've had to rearrange cafeterias. So we've been able to do that for the little kids, get them back in. And then once we get the kids back in school, we can work out any kinks we have with the elementary kiddos and do it in a safe fashion, and then be able to give us a week and a half to 2 weeks. Well, it'll give us the 2 weeks to get the middle school and the high school set up to come back for middle school and high school kids. To do everyone at once would have been a massive undertaking, and in a regular school year, we could probably pull it off, but making sure that we're following the safety guidelines and we're doing it safely, I didn't want to risk bringing everyone back at once. So if you look at what most of the schools are doing in the area, they're doing that phased-in approach to get the younger kids in first, get them in safely, put your focus in on them for that period of time, and then once they're in, iron out any issues you have with the buildings at the pre-K to 5 area, and then spend the rest of the time getting the middle and high school buildings ready for grades 6 through 12.
Anyone else from the school committee?
Yeah, one more question, sorry. I don't know if this is something we have to talk about offline, but if there is a certain day when all the staff get vaccinated, can we start a list of volunteers maybe that can go into the school so we don't have to shut down the school to let the staff get vaccinated, or can we petition to have them come to the school? Is there anything we can do to help this, to keep everything going?
Yeah, so
again, if we have to talk offline, that's fine.
No, we can talk now. So CVS, where do I start? And I'm going to try to see if I can keep everything organized with all the new information that's coming out. CVS started vaccinating teachers last week, so you had the ability to sign up for the vaccination through CVS. They're going to release more. They're going to release additional dates on tomorrow. The two major, the 11th and the 18th, the state is committing through the state vaccination sites that teachers can now get vaccinated through the state vaccination sites. So teachers will be able to sign up through those two portals. The governor just sent something out that they are dedicating 4 days in the next month solely for teacher vaccinations. It's 3 Saturdays and 1 Sunday that teachers can sign up to be vaccinated on a Saturday or Sunday to not have it impact school time. And then we just found out yesterday that Grafton has been, Uxbridge has been found, has been awarded a site. They're working with 10 different towns, and they've been able to allot a certain number of vaccines just for teachers. And we're working with them to see if we can figure out a time in which just teachers can come in to be vaccinated at that Grafton, that Uxbridge site. So there's a bunch of things going on.
Sounds good.
Yep.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Anyone else from the school committee? Good. Okay, we can open it up, but make sure you say your name and address, please, before you ask your question. And I'll let you pick, Dr. Vieira.
If you want to,
Darren Hilton had his hand raised for a while. I don't know if his question's been answered already.
you're still muted.
Hi, good evening, Dr. Vieira. I just had a question about the protocols within the classrooms. Now, I know they are supposed to be 2 feet apart. Would they still be able to accommodate all the children per classroom?
Sure. So we're going back at, we can't accommodate at 6 feet, so we're going back at a minimum of 3 feet. So depending on the grade level and the class, every student will be at a minimum of 3 feet from the closest child, depending again on the grade level and the class. In some instances, it could be greater than 3 feet, but the 3 feet is the minimum.
Okay.
Does that mean that all of the children that's originally supposed to be in a classroom will all be in the same classroom?
What grade level are we talking about? Just to make sure.
My son is in 4th grade.
Your son is in fourth. Mr. Bell, I don't think we're doing anything with the 4th grade. Is that accurate?
There are going to be some students that have to change classes in 4th grade. We're working on that right now, but just to even out space, and we don't want to have 29 in one class and 12 in another. So we have to do, there is some movement that we have to do.
Oh, I see.
I stand corrected. Thank you. Glad you're here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Holly Austin.
Hi, I actually have a student in the elementary school and I have a student in the middle school. And I just had a question as
We
far
just need
as,
your address, Holly.
oh, I'm sorry, 181 U Street.
Thank you.
So I had a question as far as the teachers being vaccinated. So if they're all being vaccinated close to around the same time, they're seeing that a lot of times with the second vaccination, people are feeling sick. So I'm wondering, do we have a plan in place for subs and teachers to come in and help out? Because it's not necessarily one day. It can be 24, 48 hours, 72 hours that people are feeling sick.
Sure. So I've heard a bunch of things and I've seen a bunch of things. People are saying that the Moderna second shot is worse than the Pfizer second shot. And I've heard different things about Johnson & Johnson. Some people are saying they're having 0 reactions to it. Others are saying they've had mild reactions to it. And even some of the people, the reactions have gone anywhere from I'm in bed with a fever and I can't get up to I just have a dull headache and I'm a little tired. So right now we're just I hate to say we're taking it day by day, but we need to see what happens on a day by day basis. There may come an instant where we have 35 teachers in one day going out and being vaccinated, and if that's the case, we'll have to adapt at that time. But I have no way of knowing when people are going to be vaccinated and how they're going to respond to it. So we'll have to take it on a day by day basis with that.
Okay.
I wish I had a better answer, but we'll have to see what happens.
No, that's
Yeah, it's been really interesting to see how people
understandable.
respond. Yeah. Jolynn.
Hi there. My name is Clarissa Sterick. I live at 16 Nelson Street. My son is an immune compromised child. Is there going to be a way that I can still keep him remote at this time so we can figure everything out, or is that option not going to be available at this time?
That option to be remote is available for the remainder of the school year. So if you are fully remote, you can remain fully remote. If you've been hybrid and you want to choose to go fully remote, you can do so.
Okay, thank you.
There is something here in the chat that I'm going to read. This comes from David Payne of 141 Northwest Main Street. It says, on Friday, there was a large portion of the staff out at the middle school. DLA students were notified via classroom and they wouldn't have their Zooms, but no notice went out to parents. Was this an oversight? I don't know the answer to that. I know that we had staff out and we had to adjust. I think we just adjusted a little bit in the morning how we were doing it. I don't know if something went out to staff. I know that we have the ability with an email to be able to send something out directly to the DLA kids. I don't know if we have the ability to do it to everyone. Mr. Payne, if you could just email Mr. Olson directly, he can answer that question a little bit better for you. Mr. Hilton, I see your hand up.
Hi, yes, I had another question about the, did I hear correctly that the kids have an option to still do fully remote or hybrid?
There is no option to do hybrid, but if you are fully remote and you want to continue fully remote, that option is available. And if you've been hybrid and you want to go fully remote because you're not comfortable being full in person, you have the ability to do that as well.
Okay, thank
So
you.
the remote option remains in place for the remainder of this school year.
Okay.
May I ask you, like, is the like the way that the fully remote children, like, you know how the teachers are from the school are teaching, Is that going to change if the kids choose, I mean, if we choose to keep our child like fully remote?
Mr. Bell?
That shouldn't change.
That should not. So the
Yep,
teachers are still going to be teaching the same subjects and whatnot.
Yep.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
Okay. Two questions in the chat. One from James. James, if you could just enter in your address before I read the question, that'd be fantastic. First and last name. Next, we have Mike Valaire. Actually, it's Ashley Valaire of 122 West Street. If someone tests positive in the class, given the less than 6 feet distance, will all the kids be considered close contact? No, just the students closer than 6 feet. So not everyone in the class would be considered a close contact. If yes, can they go fully remote while quarantining and have it count? Again, that would be a case-by-case basis, but at the elementary school, for instance, yes, if students need to quarantine, they'll have the ability to use their remote teacher. The next question comes from Maggie Price, 19 Vine Street. What is it going to look like if a student staff tests positive or is exposed to COVID? It's not going to change. The safety protocols we've had in place are going to remain. So we will continue with our contact tracing. We will see who we need to quarantine. Our principals will call families, our nurses will call families, and students and staff will have to quarantine. So that's not changing. James Gingras from 31 Hilltop Drive writes, are you going to grade in-person learning with more weight than remote? No. Teachers decide their own grading system and how they're going to do that, but emphasis isn't, you're not going to be penalized if you choose one over the other. I see a virtual hand up, John Peliquin.
Hi, John Peliquin, 10 Fairbanks Court. My daughter is a junior at the high school. My concern is that how many of the staff in the district have been vaccinated so far?
That's information I don't have, and under HIPAA, I don't know if I would even have the ability to access that.
Also, that's my concern. If the elementary and the primary school are going back on 3/22, and that staff has not been vaccinated, and we're going in less than 3 feet, and then we have multiple staff members out, and then we're not in compliance, or it becomes a safety for our students. And I'm concerned with that up at the high school. I'm concerned with that district-wide. You know, we don't have a plethora of subs to go to cover when many are out, such as on Friday.
Well, I don't think there's a plethora of subs anywhere in the Commonwealth.
No.
So, in terms of, we can't mandate that teachers get vaccinated, and I don't even think I can legally ask the question or do a survey as to who's been vaccinated or who hasn't been vaccinated. What we can do is we can look at what history has taught us and what the data has shown us is that when people follow proper safety protocols of wearing masks and hand hygiene, that it is safe to be in schools. We also have a lot of data from schools that have been back at 3 feet, at less than 6 feet since the start of the school year. And we've had limited exposure within the schools and spread within the schools. What we found is that a lot of the spreads that have occurred in the schools with kids happens outside of school. So I can't ask when staff is getting vaccinated, and that's a personal choice that they make.
But it's obviously not easy for any of the staff to get vaccinated. I have been attempting it myself as I work in the middle school since last week and have been unsuccessful. So our elementary and primary kids are going back on the 22nd, and I'm sure that possibly some of that staff is having the same issue that I personally have been having. And that's my concern. My concern is for the staff and then the safety of the kids. Overall, district-wide.
Okay. And as I said, I think the data that I shared last week, we have multiple examples across the Commonwealth of people being back in schools at less than 6 feet, following safety protocols, doing so safely.
But it is happening. It does happen. And that's my concern. Thank you.
You're welcome. Next, we have Maggie Price follow-up. If a student is required to quarantine as a result of exposure, will they be able to do fully remote learning during that time? We're going to handle that on a case-by-case basis and have those discussions with building principals. Katie Spano from 99 North Street. I've heard some schools are having parents adopt teachers to help them get vaccinated. Some schools have done that. I do know that when you get vaccinated that and you sign up, you do have to enter in your health insurance and your health insurance number and information. And if people are doing that without my knowledge or without the knowledge and consent of superintendents, that's fantastic. But I don't want to be put in a position where I'm asking staff to share out their medical information. But yeah, you're right. Some schools have done that. Huge shout out to the class of 2021. Thank you. They're excited to come together. Melissa Corporal of 24 Gilboa Street. Will there be a new limit to bus capacity? No. Under the new guidance for elementary, you could put 3 kids per seat. And at the high school and middle school, you can have 2 kids per seat. They will have to wear masks, and we will have to have windows open. Kristen Tankis of 169 Maple. I joined in late. Can you please review the dates? So once again, for those of you who have come in late, I will review the dates again. For pre-K to 5, it is Monday, March 22nd. Pre-K to 5, Monday, March 22nd. And for middle and high school, it is Monday, April 5th. At the conclusion of the school committee meeting, I will send out an email to everyone. Brenda Rivard of 28 Arch Street. My daughter's been in private school full-time with 18 kids in class since September. No closures, no spread. Teachers and students have been fine. Thank you for that, Mrs. Rivard. I do not see any other.
Mr. Reardon has a hand up.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay, thanks. I'm Kevin Reardon.
Oh, there you are. Sorry, I didn't see you there, Kevin. I apologize.
Okay. I'm Kevin Reardon. I'm the president of the Douglas Teachers Association. I just wanted to go on record here tonight and say that the DTA is not in agreement with the return dates. In 3 short days, we will have been in this mess for an entire year. The vaccine is now becoming more readily available, and we would like to follow Commissioner Riley's guidelines that say elementary school April 5th, middle school April 28th, and high school to be determined, so that teachers have more of an ability to become vaccinated before a full in-person return. Thank you.
Another question about the return dates, please. Again, the return dates are March 22nd for grades K to 5 and April 5th for grades 6 through 12. Michael Frazier, 88 North Street, writes, I thought I heard last meeting you said you would forgo April vacation. I did not say that. That was a question that was asked, and I said we would not be doing that. So we still are having April vacation.
Dr. Vieira, do you have the survey results that were done through the town? The most recent ones about how many people wanted kids to go back and stuff, just so that people can see what the townspeople said?
I do have that, but it would take me a few minutes to find it.
Okay.
It was originally on my desktop, then I buried it in a folder within a folder. So it would take me a few minutes to find that.
Well, I just asked that because I think that the majority of taxpayers in this town are buying into this idea. And they do still have, everybody has an option to stay remote. Hybrid, thankfully, is going away, but, you know, just so people know that.
Mrs. Larson, thank you for entering in the return dates for me in the chat. Pre-K to 5 on March 22nd and April 6th.
A few more questions.
April 5th for 6 through 12. Any other questions? Yeah. one more here in the chat. Scott Shea, 71 Old Farm Road. Should we still be following the 2020-21 school schedule approved on 3/4 as far as the last day of school? Yes, we will. Our last day of school will still be, I believe it's Friday, June 18th, because we had the one snow day. Jamie Russo, James has his hand raised on my screen as well. I don't know what that means, but
I'm so sorry. On my screen, there's a gentleman named James, and his hand has been raised. So
Oh,
I just
there
wanted
you
you
are.
to know. That's all.
Thank you. I see two on that. I see James and I see Monique. James, if you could just identify first and last name and address, please.
Yeah, it's James Jingras, 31 Hilltop Drive.
Okay, how are you, sir?
Good. In regards to the concerns about the kids returning back to school, I run the Dunkin' Donut franchises in the Uxbridge, Sutton, Northbridge area.
Mhm.
I manage over 100 employees through 5 locations. Since COVID started, I've had 12 positive cases in my restaurants. Not one of them has transferred to an employee because we're masking. And they walk by each other all day long. So the 3 feet will work. They're wearing masks, it will work.
Thank you, sir. Monique.
Okay. Yeah, I was wondering if we could, like, for a parent who has a child going from remote to in-person, is it possible that you might just kind of be able to kind of give us an idea briefly of like some of the protocols that are happening in the classroom, like with transition times and hand sanitization? Like Mr. Bell, I don't know if maybe that might be a good question for you in terms of like what you're already doing in the school and what the teachers kind of regularly do.
So if you walk in a lot of our classrooms, the teachers even have it written up on the board, like before snack time, they wash their hands, they sit down, they take their mask off, they hand sanitize, they eat their snack. And then when they're done with their snack, they do the same thing where they put their mask back on, they hand sanitize again. And so those are all, the teachers are great about teaching those routines. We know that when all the kids come back on the 22nd, like the first day of school again, we're going to have a lot more kids there. We're going to have some that haven't been there all year. So we got to make sure that we're making those routines known to the kids. So we'll make sure it's explicitly shared. And then we will, help out anybody that needs additional assistance. But we do have great routines in place. Ms. Brundage has been awesome about helping the teachers get those developed, and the teachers are great about following them. And it's amazing how quick even the little guys pick it up with what to do. You go in the lunchroom and they all have their little hand sanitizers they're using, or we're walking around squirting kids, and it works great. So.
Okay, thank you. If there's anything that you could provide for us at all, like just so we could like prep them for going back to make it easier for you guys and for them going back to, like, I would totally welcome that. So
cool. We'll put something together for you.
Great, thanks.
And I think we have one last question in the chat. Jen Larson from One Sunset Drive. Will we be getting lockers in the 6th grade? We're not going to do lockers this year. Kids are too close together, so we're going to continue doing things inside classrooms, and kids having their backpacks in classrooms. All right, so again, I know Mr. Bell did his forum today. You can expect stuff going out tonight in a brief newsletter with some additional information. Principals will be pushing out information over the next few weeks to families. I've asked both principals either the week before we go back and the week we're back to do community forums and staff forums to be able to answer any questions when we're going back. Communication is the key here. And, I know a lot of people are nervous. I know some people are apprehensive. So the more we can communicate with you, the better with this. So thank you for the 200 plus people that showed up. And again, we'll be sending out information over the next few days, especially for pre-K to, I know pre-K is back, but in K to 5 for our return on March 22nd.
Okay, those last few questions that came
Oh,
in.
I didn't see those coming. I'm sorry. I'll look at those real quickly. Katie Murphy, 63 Old Farm Road. Any news on graduation? No. Commissioner said today he'd be issuing us guidance on graduation in the upcoming weeks. And then Tracy Breach from 159 Main Street, will the kids be required to take their books home every day? That's going to be, an individual basis. Classroom teachers will have that conversation as to whether or not kids need to take books home or not. Obviously, if they're assigned for work, they'll need them. But we'll see what happens and what teachers require of kids as we go forward. I believe that's it for questions.
Move on to the budget, please.
All right. Let me move out of here. All right, so let me share my screen with people. So the next part of the presentation, the reason we added this meeting was to talk about the FY22 Superintendent's proposed budget. And I'm going to walk people through a slide deck of probably about 15 slides so people can get a snapshot as to where we are right now and some of the decisions that we've had to make. Start off with looking at what is our budget process. And a lot of people don't know the budget process, so I just want to spend some time talking about it. We start off by establishing priorities. Every year, budgets look different, and budgets tell different stories and different narratives. This year, or FY22, we're coming out of COVID. We don't know what that's going to look like. We don't know what the implications are going to be for regression for students. So the focus in our FY22 budget was to present a level service budget where we're providing the same services for kids this year as next year. We didn't do any additions. We didn't change anything because we wanted to do two things. One, we wanted to make sure that we understood the ramifications coming out of COVID. Two, we're finalizing our strategic plan, our 3 to 5 year strategic plan, where we're going to look at where we want to be and what's important to us and what do we value. And then we can focus some resources there. So we established our priorities. We held meetings with our leadership team to discuss all of this. I met individually along with Mrs. Keegan with our principals and our department leads to do a line-by-line item analysis. What does that mean? We looked at each line item and we looked at the cost that principals and directors were proposing for that line item for FY22. In some instances, it was higher than what was proposed or happened in previous years, and we had a discussion around that. And in some instances, it was lower. We did a line item analysis. We also looked at our contracted services, our vendors. We really didn't see too many changes or too many places we could save this year. There were a couple of things we were looking at for FY23 that might save us some money. We used revolving funds and grants to offset the budget. Just want to spend a few minutes talking about our revolving funds and grants. We used two primary revolving funds to offset the budget. It's circuit breaker and it's school choice. We really need to be, and what we're proposing is a conservative figure. We don't know what's going to happen the rest of March, April, May, and June with the budget. If we have a student that moves in, we're going to have to use our special education circuit breaker money to potentially fund that. If we have damage, if we have to do repairs, we may have to dip into our school choice money. So the money that we have allocated for FY22 budget is a conservative figure at this time because there's still a lot of unknowns between now and the end of the year. We also use grant money to offset the budget. And what we've allocated in grant money, again, is a conservative figure based off of the fact that for a lot of our grants, we won't know what the dollar figure is until after July 1. So we have to conservatively budget for our grants. We've examined building schedules for efficiencies. Some building schedules are more costly to run. They're more staff dependent than others. So we looked at our schedules to see, can we still provide the same level of services for kids with a different schedule that might be more cost effective? We use NESDEC, which is the New England School Development Council, to review enrollment projections and for an analysis of staffing needs throughout the district. and I'll share those enrollment projections and some historical data with you shortly. We examined student to teacher ratios, and we also spoke with the town administrator to discuss budget needs and available town revenues. All right, so I want to spend some time walking people through this preliminary budget proposal. And I'm going to do so slowly. I've looked at this screen a bunch of times, so I'm pretty good with it. But if you haven't seen this, I want to go through it slowly with you so people understand it. Our FY21 budget appropriation was a hair under $13.8 million. That's the final amount that the town contributed to the school budget for last year. The town administrator has told us that we can anticipate a 1.5% increase in our FY21 appropriation, which is $206,907. When you add these two numbers together, our FY town appropriation for FY22 is slightly north of $14 million. Now, when we put the budget together for FY22 for the Douglas Public Schools, in order to run the school district next year, it's going to cost us $17.5 million. So $3.5 million less than what we have allocated to the town. So we have a delta of $3.5 million. So what have we done to offset that $3.5 million? First thing we did is we looked, as I said, grants and revolving accounts. And we took a conservative approach to this to be financially responsible for what may occur between now and the end of the year. We were able to use $2.7 million to offset the $17.5 million, which brings our new preliminary budget to $14.8 million, or $822,000 over the $14 million that's being appropriated to us for the town. So now we need to look at ways to reduce the $822,000. One of the things we're going to focus in on this meeting tonight is the proposal to reduce staff, and we're going to have two additions which I'll speak to. But the reductions in staff that I'm proposing amount to $327,000. In addition to that, we have, with some ESSER 2 money and some grant money that have come forward from the federal government, we've been able to offset the FY22 budget an additional $43,000, which brings our new preliminary proposed budget to $14.4 million, or a 4.77% increase over our FY21 appropriation. What does this mean as of today? It means that today we are still $451,528 over what the town can appropriate at this time in order to run the district for next year. So what are we going to do? We are cautiously optimistic that we can close the budget gap with a combination of the following: additional line item analysis. We need to go through and look at our line item analysis. Possible additional use of revolving funds. As I said earlier, we were very conservative with those revolving funds. A possible increase in the town's allocation beyond the 1.5%, and a potential increase in grant funding. So that's how we're going to look to reduce that delta of $451,000. I put this in bigger letters and in bold. We do not anticipate any further reductions to staff beyond what I'm proposing today to close the remaining gap. So we're going to take some time looking at enrollment and staffing levels. And I want people to know that this was a long thought out process between myself and the leadership team. Staff, all staff, are the backbone of a school. You ask any kid that's graduated, they're not going to remember the book they read in the 2nd grade, or the science project they did in the 6th grade, or the history lecture in the 10th grade, or the business class they took in the 12th grade. What they're going to remember is the relationships that they built with teachers and how teachers treated them, and that bond that was created between staff, and students. And the decision to propose these cuts is based off of data, is based off of numbers, is based off of enrollment, but was not one that was done quickly. It was not one that was done hastily. It was one that was done with thought and planning and through the use of data. Our staff are so important to us. They're important to accomplishing our mission. They're important to our kids. So we took this very seriously, and we really put some time and thought into this. And I want to walk you through the enrollment and the staffing levels and the proposal. So as I said earlier, we partnered with NESDEC to look at our enrollment. And here we have historical enrollment by grade over a 10-year period. And we focused in here on this column here, the pre-K to 12. And what you'll see is in the past 10 years, we have had a 33.7% decrease in the total students enrolled in the Douglas Public Schools. In the past 10 years, we've lost 584 students. And you can see that number from 8 years to 6 years to 4 years. In the past 2 years, we've seen 149 students reduction, or an 11.4% decrease in the students attending the schools. So our enrollment has been declining for the past 10 years. If you look at the enrollment across grade levels, across buildings, and again, this isn't specific to just one building or one grade level, this is across the district. So we have our primary school here, where you're looking at approximately about 150 kids over 10 years. Same thing in the elementary school, about 150 kids over 10 years. Then as you get to the middle and the high school, you're about 125 kids over a 10-year period that we've seen a reduction. So anywhere from 10 to 15 kids per grade level per year, per building per year, that we've seen a decrease historically. Where are the kids going? What's going on here? And this was last updated in November. So it goes back to 2012. This column here represents receiving. It's school choice kids we have coming in. And as you can see, that number is pretty consistent, hovering anywhere from 115 to 130 over the past 9 years. Our homeschooling numbers, with the exception of this year, because a lot of families decided to homeschool, again, has been pretty consistent. Our sending public schools, these are Douglas students that have made the choice to school choice out. You can see the numbers were pretty low, and then when we hit the difficult patch in 16, 17, 18, we see that number increasing, and then we see it slowly decreasing again this year. The alarming numbers come from sending private schools. We've over doubled from 2012 to 2019 the number of families who are deciding to send their students to private schools. The BVT numbers have gone from 72 to 117, 120. Again, about 40 to 50 extra kids going to BVT every year. Again, a significant increase. Norfolk Aggie has been pretty consistent. But if you're wondering where this delta has come from, we can see that over the past few years, we're losing between 200 and 300 kids a year to all these different entities. You take in that a changing demographic, different families moving in, that's where that delta has come from. I didn't want to just look at historical data. I wanted to look at projections, and NESDEC helped us with it. I didn't want to be short-sighted and base the decision on what's happened. We wanted to look forward. Over the next 5 years, NESDEC is predicting that our enrollment will decline an additional 71 students over the next 5 years. So going from 1147 down to 1076. And then we kind of level out after the 26-27 school year. But it's really difficult to go out beyond 5 years. So we're seeing a decline in our projections over the next 5 years. And then finally, I looked at staffing levels. As we talked about, we've seen a 33.7% decrease in students over a 10-year period. In the same period, we looked at regular education and special education teachers. And when I talk about regular education teachers, I'm talking classroom teachers, I'm talking special area teachers. We did not include guidance counselors, adjustment counselors, OT, PT, speech, regular education and special education teachers. We've seen a decrease of 13%. So again, our rate of decrease of students is not equal to teachers. Now, there's some story behind the numbers, as Mrs. Keegan tells me all the time. We were able to lower class size, which is phenomenal. We've also been able to add additional staff. We added an adjustment counselor a year ago. We've also added specialized programs for our students with special needs. So some of it's as a result of that. If you look at our paras and ABAs, we've seen an increase in paras and ABAs of 9% in the 10-year period. And our total increase of staff is a 2.4% increase in over a 10-year period, where our students have decreased at 33.7%. So all this information was taken into account as we were looking at staffing levels, student-teacher ratios, and preparing the budget for FY22. So one of the proposed areas we're looking to make reductions is in our paraprofessional staff. And this is a conversation that started 3 years ago with the administrative team, with Mrs. Urquhart, and with the previous superintendent. So this is a process that started 3 years ago. And I just want to walk people through the process. 3 years ago, when they started this, it started with looking at review dedicated staff in a student's IEPs. So we looked at our numbers of 1 to 1 paraprofessionals, 1 to 2 paraprofessionals, 1 to 3 paraprofessionals, and how could we potentially minimize that. The review of paraprofessionals providing inclusion services. How many paraprofessionals do we have in an inclusive setting, and what's the schedule impact on that? Because as I said, a lot of times the schedule drives the need for services. One thing you're going to hear me say over and over the next few slides is the importance of making sure we're in compliance and making sure that we're educating kids in the least restrictive environment. We're going to review building-based schedules. So for instance, I'll focus in on the middle school. Our middle school runs 2 different schedules. Our 6th and 7th grade is on a completely different schedule than our 8th grade. So what does that mean? It means that we can't share staff within our middle school. And if you look at it from another lens, it basically means we don't have 4 schools in Douglas, we have 5. Because that middle school is really running on 2 different schedules, which does not allow us to share staff. So we reviewed building schedules. We looked at how students were receiving services. Could we find a better way to make sure that we're in compliance and students are in the least restrictive environment and still receiving the services they need? We really made the push to go to a co-teaching model. What does that mean? It means to make sure that we have a certified special education teacher in each of our grade levels. That was really important to us. And then finally, a presentation on this plan was made to the school committee back in FY20. So this process started 3 years ago with really shifting the model to have more certified special education teachers in classrooms, making sure we were in compliance and making sure we were servicing students in the least restrictive environment. Last year, a plan was in place for this year. So the plan, what was in place? What was that plan? It was for more full-time special education teachers in classrooms. That's what we wanted, more certified special education teachers in classrooms. The team looked at the number of paraprofessionals at the elementary, primary, middle, and high schools that would be needed to deliver services to students. A middle school schedule was reviewed and modifications were to be implemented for FY21. This plan was ready to be executed for this year. It was going to be finalized last year, and then COVID occurred on March 13th, which caused us to pause the plan. So what is the plan for next year? It's for more full-time special education teachers in the classroom. The goal is to have one special education teacher per grade level, and next year we'll be able to accomplish that in 12 of our 13 grades. The elementary, middle, and high school will have it. The primary school is just sharing one teacher for K and 1. We're looking at a schedule change at the middle school, which will allow for us to better utilize staff. And again, we spent a lot of time, principals, Mrs. Urquhart and Mrs. Nasuti, working to make sure that we were in compliance with the staff that we have and students were being serviced in their least restrictive environment. Some other pieces of data that we looked at. As I said, we already looked at enrollment data and historical trends. We looked at upcoming projections for future years. We looked at student and paraprofessional ratios. We did that thoughtful analysis by grade level and by building to ensure that IEP services would be covered by the least restrictive environment. We looked at information provided to us by radar through DESE. This is an interesting piece of data. The percentage of students on IEPs across the state is 18.4%. In Douglas, we're at 18.3%. So we're just slightly under the state average of percentage of students on IEPs. Now, paraprofessionals per 100 students. The state average is 1.995%. In Douglas, we're at 4.6%. We over double the amount of paraprofessionals per 100 students than what is the state average, even though we're slightly under the state average for students on IEPs. And then we looked at our special education historical, number of students on IEPs across the district. And from 2015-16 school year to this school year, we've seen a decrease in 18.9% of our students on IEPs. We've gone from 254 students to 206 students on IEPs. So we've seen that decrease of students on IEPs, but yet we've seen an increase in the amount of paraprofessionals that we have. So the one proposal is to look at reducing paraprofessionals. Next, we look at our professional teaching staff. And again, we did the same thing. We looked at our enrollment data and historical trends. We looked at projections for upcoming years. And we really wanted to make sure that we had limited impact on class size and limited impact for students. We really wanted to minimize that impact on class size and that impact for students if we were looking at reducing teachers. So what is the proposal? The proposal is to reduce 13.5 paraprofessionals across the district. That's across the entire district, across four buildings. The reduction of the 13.5 paraprofessionals amount to $278,000. We're also looking to reduce 2 teacher FTEs, 2 teaching positions across the district in the amount of $112,000. Now, I said we wanted to talk a little bit about compliance and educating students in their least restrictive environment. In order to make sure that occurs, we will have to add a 0.5 ABA, and we will have to add a 1.0 FTE inclusion teacher to make sure that happens. So the total net reductions are $327,447 for the proposed reductions. What are the next steps? Tomorrow I'll be hosting at 6:30 a faculty forum to be able to do this presentation again to people, to be able to answer questions that staff have at the time, to give people another opportunity to see this and to give an opportunity to those who weren't present today to hear this again. We have a school committee meeting, which will do a brief budget presentation again on March 17th at 7 p.m. I'll be presenting along with Mrs. Keegan at the Finance Committee meeting on March 23rd. The budget proposal, I'm going to continue to meet, as I said, with the town administrator to look at mitigating the gap. We have our school committee FY22 public budget hearing on April 7th. And then finally, town meeting where our bottom line appropriation will be voted on by the community will occur on Monday, May 3rd at 7 p.m. So those are the next steps in the budget process. That's the presentation at this time. I will be happy to open it up to questions from the committee at this point.
I did ask it before, but my main question was just the staying in compliance and safety. And not being so short-staffed that we open ourselves up to any issues.
Correct. And I know Mrs. Urquhart can chime in here as well, please. But when we did this and we looked through, we went grade level and we went building. And again, with the schedule change at the middle school, we will be able to stay in compliance and service kids in the least restrictive environment. Mrs. Urquhart, could you just comment a little bit more on that, please?
Sure, just to echo that, I am going to backtrack a little and just speak to the last few years. You know, something that we've really tried to do in the Douglas Public Schools over the last few years is build our programs. And a part of building those programs has been to add staff to satisfy the needs of the kids. But in many ways, what we have to do is we have to make sure that as populations change, that we're changing with them. The other thing that we have to make sure that we're doing is we are looking at the amount of kids on IEPs, which our data is showing us that the amount of kids on the IEPs are going down as amount of kids in the district are going down. So what we've done is we've sort of staffing wise, we've stayed where we have been. And through looking truly at every single IEP, we have been able to identify through making modifications of schedules, and I'm going to use specifically the middle school, we are able to do this and maintain compliance. Compliance and safety are first and foremost. We will not break the law, we will not break regulation. We never have, we never will. We're one of the most compliant districts in this state, and we will continue to do so. But in saying that, we have to make sure that we are not over-servicing. We have to make sure that we have the appropriate amounts of staff, and that's district-wide. Something that we've been able to do, and we have actually 2 pilots, one at the high school and one at the elementary school, is we've shown this idea of reducing the amount of paraprofessionals and replacing that with a special education teacher. It's allowed us to, for the most part, with the exception of the primary school at this time, and we're going to be moving towards the high school, proposing that. It's allowing us to have a special education teacher at each grade level. This allows for more 21st century teaching and co-teaching models. We're an inclusive district. We were a little late to the party with that. Inclusion really came late to Douglas, and we've worked very hard over the last 11 years to make sure that we're doing for kids what they deserve, and what they deserve is to be in the classroom with their peers. Of course, there's kids that are going to have difficulty with that. Of course, there's kids that are going to require specialized programs, and we're going to make sure that we maintain that for the kids. But in saying that, we have to also make sure that our special education teachers are in the inclusion classrooms teaching with general education. That's what's fair to the kids.
Thank you.
Yep. Anyone else from the committee?
I'd like to, yeah, I have something. So a couple of things based on this discussion. So based on some past conversations that we've had, it's very clear that a lot of kids have struggled this year. And I feel like this year really has specifically been focused on academics, extracurricular activities pretty much, for the most part, have been cut. And so I have a couple of things that I want to discuss with that. Is there any talk, or can we focus more on some extracurricular activities for all students? Because that clearly is something that was lacking this year. Secondly, can we focus on increasing substitute pay? Because that's something that obviously if we're saying that we're struggling with substitute teachers, can we try to increase their pay to attract more people to this occupation? And thirdly, one of the issues is like a child that I'm very familiar with who is a very bright kid, had a lot of struggling this year. And I'm just curious to find out if there is talk or financial implications to having programs to help kids, for lack of a better word, that are at, again, lack of a better word, the other end of the spectrum, to help these children that are really maybe gifted kids that are no longer kind of considered that on paper. And that's probably more of a Mrs. Urquhart question, but
So
I feel like they always get forgotten.
Yep. So I can try to answer all three of those. In terms of co-curricula, one of the things that's come out of the strategic plan that we worked on, and I think we have one more meeting on the 30th, and I'll be presenting to the committee in April. One of the things we're looking at, and that came through, was more opportunities for kids. So one of the things we will be looking at is how can we create more after-school activities for our kids in schools. I think one of the focus areas for me is going to be predominantly at the middle school area, but across all grade levels. In terms of sub-pay, it's a conversation we can have. What I've seen historically is that when the economy is great, no one wants to sub. When the economy is awful, people do want to sub. And when unemployment's paying you $400 a week, you have a lot of people who are choosing to stay at home. So the sub-pay could attract some people. I don't know if we're going to get those droves of people coming in to sub, but it merits a conversation. In terms of the youngsters who are struggling, as part of our ESSA2 grant, it was just approved, and I believe Ms. Sosha finally submitted it today or yesterday. We're doing two things for it. We have a pocket of money set aside for a 4-week summer program in order to identify kids who struggled this school year, who have learning gaps, and it's a 4-week program running from, I believe, mid-July to mid-August. It meets 4 days a week from, I believe, 8:30 to 12:30. It's about 4 hours a day, 3 to 4 hours a day, where we will be targeting about 10 to 15 to 20 kids per grade level, bringing them in. That's the first thing we're going to do for our struggling kids. The other thing we've done is as part of the grant, we're going to be adding 4 additional paraprofessional positions for next year in order to build an in-school Tier 2 intervention program for students who are struggling. So we're going to be adding a para position at the primary school, 2 at the elementary, 1 in the middle. The purpose of that remediation program that we got through the grant is, again, to work with and identify about 10, 15, 20 kids per grade level who are struggling, who have those gaps, that we can look to remediate them. And then at the high school, what we're offering is an after-school program to help mitigate those gaps and work with struggling kids. So I believe those 2 programs come to about $115,000, $120,000 of the grant money that we got, that we've dedicated towards struggling kids for next year, and actually starting with the summer and then building into next year to address those gaps for kids. That answer the question?
And just to follow up with the extracurricular activity, the reason why I really did bring that up too is because we had discussed earlier in your conversation that a lot of kids are leaving Douglas. They're going to a lot of different schools, and I can tell you that it's not just academics. It's the fact that there's a lot of other things that they can do that are just not academic based. Why do you think kids go to BBT? They don't want it. They're not, maybe college isn't their thing, and that's perfectly fine. So, I think not just saying middle school, but I think I would like to have something in that budget that really does show that high school does offer a lot of different activities and paths, like Josh has been working on for kids, so that they don't go outside of Douglas when we can have it here in the public school.
Correct.
The awesome public
Josh's
school.
pathways have been awesome. And I believe, Mrs. Keegan, you could chime in. I think we're in the process of approving some new clubs and doing something with that. I saw that email, but I didn't have a chance to fully read it today. Is that accurate at the high school level?
Yes, actually, yes, that's correct. And actually, we have been working on them. The DTA, Mr. Romano, and prior Mr. Maines on establishing, I believe it's either 4 or 5 additional clubs at the high school. We were able to establish a couple of clubs at the middle school. And as you were talking earlier, Mr. Vieira, you were also thinking of expanding that as well.
Yeah, it's 4 new clubs that we're looking at. The web design, the art club, robotics, and formalizing the gaming club.
So we're looking at adding some more at the high school as well, Mrs. Boulder.
Dr. Vieira, can I
maybe the music program too?
Oh.
I don't know who.
That was me. That was Neely.
Okay, go ahead, Neely.
I just want to make a comment. You know, I know there's a lot of paraprofessionals on here right now, and what I do, I think all the administration wants to put out there is we acknowledge and know and see that in so many ways the paraprofessionals are the pillars of the classroom. You are the people that are consistently there, and you are always the ones making sure that the kids have what they need if the teachers are doing something else, and so on and so forth. So this is not a direct reflection of you, because your work is duly noted and seen. But we have to pay attention to the data. We have to pay attention to the numbers. And the numbers of kids on IEPs are decreasing. And there is a fair amount of work within our schedules that we can do to ensure, again, that our special education teachers are in the classrooms with the kids. So I just want to make sure that you know that this is not a direct hit on you.
Mrs. Charniak.
I have a couple for you. You knew you weren't getting away that easy. So first of all, let me just say, I appreciate how much work you have put into this, the budget committee, the admin. For 1 second, I do not question your care for the teachers or students, not for a second, but still allow me to hold your feet to the fire for just a little bit.
Cool.
So when I look at the budget summary page, even after the, even after the budget offsets, we're looking at, and maybe Courtney can help me out here too, we're looking at about 14.8 million. The FY21 budget appropriation was about 0.8 million. So we are up for level services, you said, right around $1 million, a little over $1 million. Can you tell me where all of that money is going for level services? That additional $1 million?
I'll let Courtney speak a little bit more to that. I don't have those sheets in front of me. I know that was going to be part of our public hearing. So Courtney, I don't know if you can answer that. Again, 80% of our budget. Yeah, 80% of our budget staff.
Yeah, 80. It's either 84 or 87% staff. So that's going to be, that steps in, and there's a COLA included in there as well. But also keep in mind that it changes each year with the use of grants and revolving funds. It actually has been increasing in the last few years, but you know, it does change and vary. So that's part of it. So it's not only on the expenditure side, it's also on the use of grants and revolving fund side. We do have, well, at this time, I don't know that I don't know if they'll remain, but we do have some textbooks also for the primary school, elementary school, middle school, and high school. That's part of our regular operating budget. Some years it's more than other years. And that's a pretty substantial amount right there. In fact, I believe that it's $189,000 just for textbooks alone. But again, it's usually driven mostly by staffing costs. To be honest with you, some years certainly special education. As I said, I apologize. I don't have the budget details right in front of me, but special education tuition and contractual services can vary depending on students as well.
Right. Okay. I also realize that $1 million isn't actually a lot to come by in a school district. So I get that. But, you know, when you're trying to pull money out of Douglas, it makes a difference. Okay. My next question, 13.5 paras. We know there's not such thing as a half a person. So could you tell me, do you know how many actual individual people we are talking about needing to eliminate? How many actual positions?
So I don't have that.
I can answer that.
Oh,
so
I got 3. Go ahead, Neely.
Okay. So there actually is a 0.5 position. So a half day position, we'll call it.
Okay, so it is
Not a half of a person, it's a half of a position.
No, I know. No,
Yeah.
I know. I was wondering how many of those positions were half positions. So is it 14 positions we're talking about? 3 full positions and 1 half position? Is that correct?
13 full,
13 full, 1
1
half.
half. Yep.
Okay. All right. I didn't know if we were looking at like 24 plus, 24 halves. 24 halves plus whatever.
And
Okay.
some of the positions, because we have so much movement within our paraprofessional staff, what we're calling TBDs, the positions right now that aren't filled, and may remain unfilled throughout the remainder of the school year. So when we meet with people this week, it's not actually 13.5 or 14 people we're talking with. It's less than that because many of the positions are TBDs and unfilled positions at this time.
Okay. Now, I don't know if this is an uninformed question, but Neely, maybe you can help me here too. If we're going to take out that number of paras and we're talking about hiring like a special ed teacher, is it for co-teaching? And then related to that, if the answer is yes, are we looking at fewer inclusion classrooms and therefore a higher percentage of students on IEPs in the classroom with the co-teacher? Can you like elaborate on that?
Josh, can you jump in on the amount of that we would have for the co-teacher for the classroom? Becky, just simply because I don't know how many kids would be in the class.
Yeah, so as we went through it, what we're really going to be doing is the pairs that we already have, we're going to use more efficiently so that there aren't cases where there's a pair coming down from flex and there's a pair that's already in there for inclusion. The same para can cover both. It's just they're keeping an eye on one more kid. The other thing is that the special ed teachers do cover. They all do 3 inclusion classes, so that covers 3 sections right there.
Okay.
And then we also, our case numbers are way down, especially at the high school. So it is easier to have fewer sections. So.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I sort of want to ask this to the point, and again, I don't question care of the staff. I look at the numbers in terms of the population is decreasing. We're looking at that, but also the percentage that we're losing each year is going down. I believe it was like at 33 and then down to 11. So that's also a good sign in a way. And I just want to say that I think that Douglas has, or should have, it has a reputation for being really good for special ed students, and that's earned through hard work and trust. There's a part of me that questions how many students would we have on IEPs if you didn't have that extra body in the room, because I know that those teachers don't just touch on the kids who are on IEPs. They're there to be a hand to the teacher and to everybody in the classroom. So I'm struggling with this a little bit, but I trust. I don't know. I don't know. It's a question mark for me, but I don't have better answers for you. So.
And what we'll be able to do at our next meeting is, I want to be mindful and respectful of people, and I don't want to identify the positions,
of course,
on camera. I want to be able to have principals have that discussion with staff members this week, so they can have that one-to-one conversation with staff members, explain the process, explain the thought process, and explain what's going to happen from now to the end of the year with individual staff members. At our meeting next week, once positions have been identified and where they're coming from in buildings, we can have a more detailed conversation about the impact. And I think you'll see that through the amount of positions that just to be determined and are unfilled at this time, and where we're doing the shifting from, you'll be able to see that the impact is really minimal. And as I said, I want to make sure we're in compliance, and that was a key driving force. And I also want to make sure that we're servicing kids in our least restrictive environment. And as Neely touched on, I said, this is something that started 3 years ago. It's a process that started 3 years ago, really shifting from using paraprofessionals inside classroom to a more co-teaching and inclusive model with special education teachers. the other piece of this and a big driving force is looking at the change in the middle school schedule is really going to allow us to do some things in our middle school.
Okay.
So
I know it's complex.
At our meeting on Wednesday, I'll be able to elaborate a little more. I just really don't want to identify positions and grade levels until I've had the ability to have, or principals have had the ability to have the conversation with people.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I ask a follow-up to what you just said?
Sure.
When we're talking about co-teaching, so for example, if you have a special ed teacher in a classroom, let's say it's Mrs. Tamilia's classroom or Mrs. Fitzpatrick's classroom, just
Okay.
to get their names, and Mrs. Tamilia, maybe she had to step out for a little while, or she had something came up or whatever. Is the idea that the special ed teacher can come in and kind of teach her class at the same time? Is that kind of the thinking behind that versus like a paraprofessional?
Neely, do you want to take that and what the co-teaching model would truly look like?
So basically what co-teaching is it's the concept of two educators taking one topic and implementing the curriculum together. The level of differentiation is the responsibility of any teacher that's within the classroom, but they may work together to differentiate for all the kids. What you have to think of within an inclusive school or an inclusive model is that inclusion is about the umbrella. Okay, so you have kids who are here and you have kids who are here, and you have to tackle all. That's really hard to do within a little screen, but it's basically the concept of having to tackle the level of all the kids within the classroom. But within an inclusive model, you want to make sure that all kids have the opportunity to receive that instruction with their peers in a general education classroom. So basically what happens is the general education teacher and the special education teacher bounce off of each other. And again, we've had gorgeous examples of how that's happened. And I'm going to throw Megan Zbicki's name out at the high school. You know, when Josh, it was now, COVID throws me off 3 years ago, that we really started implementing a true co-teaching model. And Meg, very slowly, Meg started going in and she started working with different gen ed teachers to start implementing, grade level curriculum, but make sure it's differentiated for all kids as they need it. And that's also a benefit to general education kiddos too, because not all kids are going to learn topics or concepts at the same level, so you have somebody who understands levels of accommodation and modification and has been trained in that. So it's helpful for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. That was actually really helpful because I was thinking about how there's teachers that are teaching at 10 different levels in their classroom. I don't know how they can do that. And that's so hard. So,
a lot.
Yeah.
A lot.
Anyone else from the committee? No, you have a couple in the chat. I don't know if they've already been answered.
Let me see here. Let me go back.
Yeah.
All right. Jocelyn Huff, 89 Main Street. How has the percentage of students receiving services changed over the past 10 years? I think I said, I don't know if that question means what services they're receiving or who's on an IEP, but I think I said it was about 18.9% decrease in students on IEPs over the past 10 years. There was a question from John Peliquin of 10 Fairbanks Court. How will special education teachers co-teaching help the budget? It won't. All it's doing is it's moving towards a model that we wanted to move towards about 3 years ago, of having special education certified teachers inside the classrooms with people. So, and I agree with you, paraprofessionals are underpaid in the district. Caroline Fitzpatrick, 22 Maryland Drive. I don't know if you have a question or.
I do.
Oh, okay, sorry.
That's okay. No, I'm here.
Oh, you're here. All right. All right.
No, I just have some comments I'd like to make about the budget and other resources in order for us to get money for the budget. my primary concern is the budget that we have for our students who choose to go to BVT. At this point, and I did, if my research is correct, our fiscal year 21 assessment for BVT is $1.4 million.
Sounds about accurate.
And that's for 120 students.
Correct.
And that's a lot of money for 120 students. Also, BVT spends on average per pupil capita is about $19,000, whereas Douglas is about $14,400. And these numbers come from 2018 report done on the DOE website. So in order for us to send our students who choose to go to BVT, we have to make up that money in between the per pupil per capita. Is that correct? Is that where some of the money is going to?
I'm trying to make sure I understand your question.
Okay.
And if Courtney's puzzled, then you know you stumped us, Caroline.
And I'm doing my job well.
So go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, she can repeat it again. Maybe I can clarify.
All right. So in Douglas, we spend per pupil $14,000, roughly $14.4 thousand per student. BVT, their numbers say that they spend $19.2 thousand per student. So is Douglas responsible for that roughly $5,000?
Oh no. Okay.
Douglas up to the.
No, I thought that's what you were saying, but I wasn't sure. But no, there really isn't a connection between either one. Per pupil expenditure is just the amount that DESE calculates per individual district of what they are spending per pupil. So you can actually run an entire report for all school districts throughout the entire state, and they'll all.
Yes, I saw that one.
Yeah, they'll all be different, but there's no connection or no making up a difference or anything of that in any way. There's maybe you may be thinking of net school spending requirements or things, but even that's a separate calculation for each individual public school district as well.
All right, but in the contract that we have with BVT, the fiscal year 21 increase was 5.23%. And we're asking for 1.4? What was our percent for Douglas?
Well, actually, that's not the amount that we're asking for. That's actually the amount that has been, we're hoping preliminarily, but at this time, the amount that the town feels that they have the revenues to give to us for an additional amount to add to our FY 2021 appropriation.
So, Carol, I think I might be able to answer your question.
Okay.
So there are 13 communities that make up the BVT network. We're one of the 13 communities. BVT puts out a budget. Obviously, with their shop equipment and what they have to do, the cost to run it is higher than the cost to run a traditional public school. I believe the number is 9. If 9 of the 13 communities vote yes on BVT's budget, the other 4 do not have a choice.
Okay.
So I believe this year the town of Douglas at our spring town meeting, which happened in the fall, actually voted no on the BVT.
Yes, we
budget.
did.
But we were the 13th town, and it was more of a statement. So if 9 towns vote yes, then the other 4 are locked into whatever the rate is, 5, 6, 7, 8%. To answer your question, if less, the money, it's all one budget because we're one community. But the $14 million, the $1.4 million that goes to BVT isn't coming out of the school's budget.
Well,
it isn't it.
Well, it's a part of the overall, the revenues. There's only certain revenues that are available to the town, and then they have to take off certain things like the BVT assessment, health insurance, Worcester Regional Retirement, and things of that nature. The large expenditures, fixed expenditures, debt and interest, principal and interest payments. Things of that nature. And then they come down to what's left in revenues to divide up accordingly.
So if less kids went to BVT, there'd be more money to allocate across the town.
Okay, so is there, where 120 students are going to BVT, and that's roughly 30 students a year, and we're paying the over $1 million, whatever it was,
1.4 million.
1.4 million. Can we limit the amount of students that we allow to go to BVT? Because the money that we're spending there is being taken out of the money that should be available for Douglas students sitting in Douglas seats. And our students are being hit. You're saying it's all coming from one bucket, but our students from Douglas High School are the bucket. Those are the students that we should be giving the finances to. And I find it so confusing that we can sit here and talk about laying teachers off and laying paraprofessionals off when I don't believe every resource has been looked at to say, okay, what if we say with not even just BVT, but with some of the other expenditures, why do we allow 30 students to go to BVT every year?
We don't have the choice. Kids have the choice to decide where they want to go. BVT, through their formula, allocates a certain number of seats per the town. And if a child who's a resident in Douglas and whose parents are taxpayers in Douglas make the choice to send their kids to BVT and the slot is available, we can't limit the slots that are available to students on BVT. What we can do is we can make the Douglas Public Schools as attractive as possible to keep kids from making the choice to go to BVT, but we can't limit or cap the number of students who go to BVT.
Then if we have 120 students going from our district, and I've seen other districts have 50, 53, 65, why is there such a discrepancy between the number of students being pulled from our district and the number of students being pulled from other districts?
So I'm laughing because I had this conversation with Dr. Fitzpatrick back in November when I went and I met with him. So his explanation is that we own, I believe it's 7.3% or 7.9% of the BVT empire. And the allocated amount of that is 30 students per for Douglas. Now, with that said, the other thing that happens with these schools is they know they have 300 seats to fill for their freshman class. So they might allocate 20 to Douglas, 10 to Upton, 13 to Mendon, 14 to another community.
Right.
At the end of their first round, if they only have 250 kids accepted, they're going to fill their 50 slots. So then they'll go to the next round of kids and say to Douglas kids, okay, you didn't make the first round in Douglas, but you made the second round. Do you want to come to BVT? And then they go to the next list, and they'll do that in every community. Now they're up to 285 kids. Now they need 15 slots. They'll go to the next round and do it. So that's how they fill their slots.
But just, and I don't mean to make this a long protracted point, but it's just, if I'm confused about it, I am sure many other people are as confused as I am. If our population is now, I think, is between 8,000 and 9,000 in the community, and I know other communities have a higher population, are they basing the number of students they choose from a population formula? Is it how many students they take per 1,000? Or what are they basing it on? If we get 30, everyone get 30 slots?
No, I believe it's based off of, I don't want to misquote what the formula is based off of, but I also know that once you get into round 2, round 3, round 4, it's also not uncommon to, when school starts in September, they have 10 openings, and then they reach out to schools in September to kids and say, you didn't get in last year, but we have an opening now in September. Are you interested in coming? And kids leave school districts in September. They're going to fill their 300 slots or whatever the number is until they get there. And if they have to do it in October, November, they will. I don't want to speak to the formula.
I do understand that, Dr. Vieira, but what I don't understand is why Douglas, at a very small percentage of, we don't have a large population. We are, I believe it's either the third or the fourth school with the third school with the highest number of students going to BVT. Excuse me?
We have the second lowest population. There's only one town smaller than us, and we send the third highest number of kids. That was a conversation I had with Dr. Fitzpatrick in there. And, you know, we can look at this a couple different ways. I really don't want to get too long into the dialogue, but
I think if we don't get too long into the dialogue, we might be missing an important chance to find some more money there.
We're not going to, Caroline, we're not going to find the money because BVT
doesn't work that way.
But who's making the rules for BVT?
The state.
So the state is saying they can come in and take from a population of 8,000, a third. They take a third of our incoming freshmen.
Correct.
A third.
It was made back when the agreement was made with BVT, back whenever BVT began.
So can we make a new agreement?
The way to do it
was when the consortium was originated.
The way to do it, we can't change the formula. It is what it is. What we can do.
Why?
Because it's
why
the law.
Can't we change?
Because it's the law. So what we can do is we can make the Douglas Public Schools as attractive to kids so they don't want to apply to BVT and they don't want to go to BVT. We had 60 kids of our, I believe, 85 or 90 eighth graders apply. We had 2/3 of our kids apply to BVT this year. That is an astronomically high number. So one of the things I've been looking at, and I've been talking to principals about, and one of the things that, you know, I said when Ms. Mulder asked the question, is bringing in more options to kids at the middle school. Because the more attractive we can make the Douglas Public Schools to kids, that's what we can control. We can't control the formula. We can't control what his percent increase is every year. It's a formula that we agreed upon. It's a state formula. It is what it is. What we can control is keeping kids in the district and making our school system as attractive to these eighth graders so they don't want to leave the district.
And I agree 100% with you, but to wrap for me is how are we going to make this school as attractive to them as possible when we're looking at faculty reduction, para reduction, and no money, because all the time the town is saying we don't have enough money, but we seem to have enough money to let 120 of our students go to BVT. But how do we make our school that attractive when every time the budget comes up, we target staff, we target faculty, we target extracurricular programs?
Well, we didn't.
I'm being very respectful saying this. Please don't take it the wrong way.
What we did
target, what you're saying does not make sense.
We didn't target extracurricular programs. We're actually adding extracurricular programs.
And where's that money coming from then?
Coming from the FY22 budget.
So the extracurricular programs are more important than paraprofessionals and faculty.
The extracurricular
I'm asking tough questions, and I'm sorry, but
the extracurricular programs are part of the budget. And again, it's not that the paraprofessionals are not important, but we can continue.
And faculty and staff. I mean, it's not just the paraprofessionals; it's the teachers also.
Yeah, correct, but we have a financial responsibility to the taxpayers to put out a budget that's financially responsible. We can run our school district and still offer kids the same programs, the same level of services with the reduction in this staff. And a lot of it's going to start with a change in the schedule of the middle school, which will allow us to do it. The reduction in staff and paraprofessionals is going to lead us to be able to do a more inclusive model. And if you just look at the simple numbers, we've lost 33% of our kids over the past 10 years, but we've not seen the same decrease in staff. So that's why we're making that decision. So, you know, you asked the question, you know, point blank, Caroline, you know, we're proposing to add, I think Josh said 4 or 5 co-curricular activities in order to make in order to increase how attractive the high school is and that's a choice we made. With the reduction of staff, we're still able to offer the same level of services, not a lesser level of services, to our kids and to our community.
Can I jump in and just ask a question?
Sure, Becky.
All right, sorry. And I don't know, Heather, if you can chime into this too. I mean, I think whenever anybody talks about how are we going to get more money, like if you're talking to the school at a school committee meeting, you're preaching to the choir. So I don't know if it's worthwhile to, make sure you go to town meeting, make sure you're paying attention to Board of Selectmen meetings, FinCom. There's a lot of places to voice.
Oh, please. I've been a member of the Douglas community and a very proud member of the Douglas community for over 20 years. I've also sent 4 of my children through the high school. I know what I'm speaking of. And I'm not. The most respect.
No, it's not a comment on respect, and it's not a comment.
I've been to the FinCom meetings. I've been to the town meetings. I've been to the school committee meetings. I've been in front of your board many times over the last 18 years.
Ms. Fitzpatrick, it is not a comment to you personally.
And I know that. I know.
It is a comment that, in my experience, there are limited numbers of people who are speaking out on behalf of the schools at other town meetings, and it doesn't hurt to show up. That is a general comment to all of the population of Douglas. That's all.
Mm-hmm. And I appreciate that. I truly do appreciate that.
Thank you, Karen. And you believe me, it's a point that, just to bring closure to this, I had the meeting with Dr. Fitzpatrick. We spent 3 hours together looking at numbers. It was a back and forth very similar to the one that you and I had, where I challenged him and held his feet to the fire, because I don't think the formula is fair. And I'm glad that my numbers and your numbers matched up. We are the second smallest community. There's only one other community less than us, but we send the 3rd highest percentage of kids to Douglas. So we did have that discussion already. Julie Mulder writes in the chat, don't forget Norfolk Aggie, that's even more money than BVT, correct? And I don't think there is a limit to the students who can attend. Also, there are many kids who don't attend Douglas Public Schools right now, but for high school, they may choose to go to BVT or Norfolk. That is correct. The kids have the right to choose the education if we can't provide it to them in a public school. Amy Cagle, 123 Manchuk Street, says 2 things. It's not just the extracurriculars, it's also the ability to offer varied course of study. For instance, more foreign languages, trade classes, AP classes, et cetera, et cetera. I'll agree with you, we only offer 1 foreign language. Trade classes, that's why DVT exists. I think our AP course offerings, from what I've seen with Josh, line up pretty well with what...
they're superior to BVT, the AP programs.
And then I know a lot of parents are looking at the course of studies, the high school versus BVT in their decisions for where kids to apply. I'm sure that's happening. But, the Pathways program at the high school and the 5 different pathways that Josh and his team have put together, we're hoping to market that significantly over the next few years. Carol, I know you guys have done a lot of work with the criminal justice program and hoping to keep a lot of kids in district by doing that. The business program is fantastic. And we're looking, we partnered with Blackstone Valley Hub in order to try to offer some welding classes and a cybersecurity class, again, to keep kids in district. We're trying everything we can, and again, it's been 6 months, trying everything I can do to keep kids in district and market it and make it attractive. Next in the chat, Nicole Walker. We also have a STEM grant, 300,000, 100K over 3 years. So we're working on developing student interest and engagement in STEM fields. We've spent very little of that money so far. So again, we're working on that. Carolyn Walsek, school choice mom from Webster. When my daughter was in her freshman year, Douglas students who school choiced out were part of the DHS athletic programs. Douglas is providing options for these students. Perhaps this could be revisited. Sure, so looking at more athletic options is obviously a choice that we could look at. Monique, how are you?
Hi. So my biggest concern is how will differential learning be maintained? Because I really do believe that is a big part of what makes schools competitive. And that's what I look for my own kids, what's keeping them at the top of their learning. And I think that I have seen where that's been easier to do with the paraprofessionals in the classroom, in inclusion classrooms. So I'm just kind of wondering how that's going to be maintained. You know, is there going to be more on the regular ed teacher to work with you know, the special ed kids in the classroom? Is that going to?
I'll have Mary answer that question just to make sure. And Beth, I see your hand up too. Mrs. Urquhart.
Yeah, what's ultimately important, and I'll go back 11 years ago when the district went to an inclusive model, was to make sure that we had appropriate professional development, you know, and to be quite honest, I think that our general education and our special education teachers would definitely benefit from more professional development in co-teaching models. So I think that could be a piece of the puzzle, no doubt. You know, like I had said earlier, we had the ability through the elementary school 3 years ago and through the high school 3 years ago to almost have pilot programs, which have now become a reality. And we've seen that by utilizing this model, by decreasing the amount of paraprofessionals and increasing the amount of special educators in the classrooms with the general education teachers, that the kids have been benefiting from, and again, not just the special education kids, the general education kids have also started benefiting from that model, because what the teachers ultimately have to do is they have to work together as a team. And they have to, you know, they create curriculum together, they differentiate together, you know, and it's a partnership, you know, and it's also a culture, you know, and it's an important culture that we want present for the Douglas Public Schools. You know, something that with Mrs. Keegan today that she brought to my attention as well, and I didn't even think about it, but we've really been making an effort to make sure that our support staff across the district, not just special education teachers, but also our school adjustment counselors, are across each school, to make sure that we have a continuum of service to meet that social emotional piece and the academic piece. And this all pulls together. So what we're ultimately doing is we're taking our inclusive model, we're taking our inclusive programs, and we're upping the ante. You know, does that make sense?
Yeah, well, so that makes me have a question. Are there, because I saw it in 3rd grade, I think, is there going to be like reading levels, so where one teacher is going to take the high reading group or one teacher is going to take the high math group, especially in those 2 subjects? I think those are, you know, where I'm mostly concerned. Are we going to see that?
So that's more of a school-based principle, and I'm not avoiding the question. I'm not sure that we're there to talk about the curriculum piece for next year. John, I would assume that you're not there yet, because we haven't gotten to that point that we've done teacher assignments and things like that.
I can't speak to even with the reductions that we're talking about. Our teachers should still be able to differentiate, do small groups within their classrooms. Obviously, this year small groups are challenging, and we have to keep distancing and those types of things. But the cuts that we're talking about, the elementary school at least, we should still be able to maintain that same level of reading and math differentiation.
That answer your question?
Yeah, I think there'll be some more discussion as we get closer to the year, but yeah, for now, thanks.
You're welcome. Beth,
and to just one more part, because I don't want to leave you hanging on that. You know, I think, like Dr. Vieira said, this is the first presentation on this. You know, I think as time goes on, as these meetings go on, we're going to be able to provide you with more detail. But right now, we're still being sensitive to the process, and we want to make sure that that we speak to particular people and like that. So we're not trying to be vague.
Thanks.
Beth Bergstrom.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
I think I've got myself confused, but that's not anything. That's not anything new. I think Becky had kind of asked some of the similar questions that I had. So like, I know, so we're reducing that 13.5 para positions. Some of there's not actual people in. whatever, but we're also adding positions at the same time.
Correct.
So we're not necessarily looking at a huge reduction in staff. Are we just looking at moving them around based on where the need is?
So Beth, what I want you to think about, I'm going to give an example, okay? If you remember correctly, 3 years ago, we had a scenario where we had 3 paraprofessional positions that we attempted to fill multiple times over the course of the year. In January, John and I came to the point that we realized that we were not going to fill those positions because we couldn't. However, at the same time, we started doing a lot of research and looking at different models. And I actually did a presentation to the school committee on the model of co-teaching and having a special education teacher at each grade level. And research was showing that having that model was more beneficial to kids learning. So what we did at that point was we abandoned the idea of the 3 paraprofessionals. I did the presentation, we went to the school committee and sought approval for an additional special education teacher, where at that point allowed us to have a special education teacher at each level. For the last 3 years, we've had that, and we've had the data to show the success for not only the teachers in their co-teaching model and how they've been able to differentiate and work together, but also the levels that the kids have been able to accomplish. So Beth, it is that concept of, again, abandoning the idea of the amount of paraprofessionals that we have at different levels, but like you had seen that addition of a special education teacher. Does that make sense?
It does. I guess I'm coming at it from like a couple different points of view. I think there's special ed inclusion teachers, but then there's also the separate flex special ed teachers. They're not going to be going into that co-teaching model, but I know that they sometimes will help out where they can and assist as well. So I guess my question is, where are we adding the extra special ed teacher? Or is that something we can't really talk about right now because it depends on movement and stuff like that?
Can we wait till next week to have that conversation?
No, we can. I think first and foremost, like our ABAs and paras, and I say this with respect, they're grossly underpaid. And I know that that's not something that the administration likes. I know that you guys are doing the best you can, but like, I don't know. I don't know. It's really like, they're just so important. And I see what you're doing, and I understand the model and I understand the progression of it. But I also think, like, with that COLA, did they get a cost of living increase this year as well? Or was it just the teachers?
Everyone took a 0 in FY21. Everyone that associated with the Douglas Public Schools took a 0%.
Okay.
All right. Melissa Mulvar, you had your hand up next.
I was just going to explain to Mrs. Salvis how we can effectively co-teach, and that is how we differentiate that we are able to reach all levels of learning so that all the kids go. I mean, I've been co-teaching for years, both in the classroom and in the special ed
realm
as well. And it is how we are able to reach all levels by co-teaching. And it's collaboration. I mean, you have to be a team, but that's how you can enrich the higher levels, and you can support the struggling learners.
Thank you. John Peliquin.
Okay, I have a couple of questions. I think I understand this. So we're going to reduce our staffing by 13.5 paraprofessionals, which I happen to be one of in the middle school. So I'm a little confused by we'll have co-teachers teaching in the classroom that are special ed. So how how are we in compliance if that teacher is pulled for a meeting, or if a sped teacher is doing testing, and we have the inclusion kids and other kids in that classroom at the same, I guess I just don't, I see what I do every day and I just don't understand how that piece of it works, I guess.
So Jonna, I think
ahead.
what's important to recognize is you see what you do every day within the schedule that you're living within right now. And what's important to know is that, you know, that schedule does require some adapting. So in consideration of the adaptation of the schedule, in addition to the review that, you know, Laura and I did of all of the service delivery grids, we can certainly stay in compliance, because if we could not stay in compliance, this wouldn't even be a proposal. You know, and something that I think is important to say right now, and I think this is coming at the time of the budget, right? The reduction of 13.5, or the proposal of a reduction of 13.5 paras is coming at the time of the budget. But in addition to that, what we have to be mindful of is we have multiple factors that are also telling us that we do have to continue to audit our programs, and we do need to cut down on some of the paraprofessionals that we have in the district, simply because we don't have the population to serve anymore. So that's an important fact that we have to keep in mind. But back to your point, Jonna, you know, it is possible with that schedule change to maintain compliance, but there will have to be changes. You know, again, I want to be,
now,
I don't want to speak in specifics right now of the middle school, because I want to be sensitive to the fact that we can't get into the details at this time.
Well, I think overall, sitting here on a school committee meeting and saying that you're going to reduce staff by 13.5, and you've got how many of your paraprofessionals on here, it's not really very sensitive. But my next question, I'm sorry, I'm a little off track on that one. The schedule, now you keep saying the schedule. Do you mean the schedule that we are working within right now this year? Because this schedule that we're working in this year is going to be the absolute worst I've ever seen. But it's not the only one I've ever had. I've had one that has been much easier and more effective. And I also feel like I do, not that I do the curriculum with the teachers, but I do co-teach with them in a sense, working with my students or other students or kids that are falling behind. Not that that's my thing, but I mean, as a paraprofessional, I feel like I'm already doing that.
So
Neely, can I just respond to one thing before you chime in? I want to address the first comment, Jonna, and I apologize if I didn't explain the process clearly enough. The first step in discussing the budget is with the school committee. That's always where it needs to start. It needs to start with the school committee. And I need to present this proposed budget to the school committee before I have a conversation with people. It's a difficult timeline. It's a difficult thing to balance. And we're trying to be very sensitive of people's feelings. It's not appropriate to have the conversation with people before we present to the school committee. I try to give people enough notice by sending out an email to staff on Sunday informing them of this meeting so that they would have enough notice to be able to attend it and hear it and not be blindsided. But the first step in the process always has been and always will be to present to the school committee on it. We're also following up with another meeting tomorrow for those people who couldn't attend. We're also trying to be very sensitive and mindful to not identify positions. And I know that causes people a lot of stress, but we want to be able to have those individual conversations with staff members. Principals want to be able to sit with people and have those discussions with them as to how that impacts it, so it doesn't play out and no one's finding out on a Zoom meeting that their position's being eliminated. So I know that it may not seem like it's being sensitive and thought out, but there is a process that we need to follow. And I do not want anyone to find out that they're losing their job through a Zoom meeting. I want that to occur through a discussion later on this week with principals. In terms of your question about schedule, as I said when we presented, the fact that you're on 2 different bell schedules makes it very difficult for you to share staff.
I know.
Your 6th and 7th grade teachers cannot, I don't want to say cannot because I don't like to speak in absolutes, makes it very difficult for 6th and 7th grade teachers to be able to share staff with 8th grade teachers. So that's the first step in the process. So that's going to allow us to be more efficient with staff. The other thing that we talked about, and was a process that started some time ago, is looking at how we deliver services to kids. And I think that'll play out, and those conversations will come to light next week. But if we have those conversations now, we're going to identify programs, and we're going to identify positions, and we're going to identify people. And that's not something I want to play out on camera. I want to give the people the ability to have those private conversations with principals. So Neely, you can pick it up from there, please.
The last thing I was going to say, thank you, Paul. The last thing that I was going to say, Jonna, is, this is something that Brian and I were we were working on it really for the last 2 years regarding the schedule. And then, when COVID came, unfortunately the bottom fell out, and it was something that we had to abandon because that wasn't the priority anymore. The pandemic was. So, we picked up this year and we started the work around it, and here we are.
Okay, thank you.
We have a couple of things.
If you can end it up with those 2.
I'll end it with the 2 things in the chat. Thank you. So one's from Gloria Peters, and I agree with you. 9 Hugh Street. I have 4 children in the schools, some of them on IEPs, and I agree with you. I want to say thank you to everyone for all their hard work, dedication, and passion, especially when it comes to special education services. Douglas has been outstanding with handling speech, PT, OT, behavioral services, not just through the special education teachers, but the absolute support of classroom teachers, paras, and ABs. 100% yes, agree with you. And then Stacy Young of 135 Main Street in Upton, Mass. Writes, if our position is eliminated, is that for this year or for next year? You will finish out this school year. These proposed reductions would take effect July 1 of 2021 for the 21-22 school year.
Thank you, everyone. Remember, we have a meeting next week and public hearing on the 7th.
Correct.
You'll have time to ask questions before we vote on the budget.
All right. Next on my report is just a quick glimpse into the colleges some of our kids have been accepted to. The list you have in front of you is not an exhaustive list. Not everyone has submitted where they're going. But I asked Josh to send this to me, and I want to share it with everyone because I'm really proud of where our kids have got into. Locally within New England, we see kids going and being accepted to state schools, which is awesome. We see names like Assumption, Bryant, Emmanuel, Mass College of Pharmacy, WPI, Quinnipiac, some great schools within New England. We have equally an impressive list, and I love seeing kids branch out outside of New England and not scared to see what else is out there in this great world of ours. So just some names of schools that kids have been accepted into. We already know about the U.S. Naval Academy, which is fantastic. But we have our students apply to and get into Arizona State, Baylor University in Texas, Catholic University outside of D.C., University of Delaware, Fairfield, Fordham, University of Iowa, Loyola in outside Chicago, Michigan State, Penn State, just such an awesome array of schools. And like I said, I always love it when I see kids applying and when I see counselors pushing kids to apply outside of New England and branch out. So really proud of this list. And, the schools that kids get into A lot of it's based off of their hard work, but their hard work also comes from the support of teachers and the support of parents and families. So this is a testament not only to our kids, but also to our staff who've got them to the point to not only apply to these schools, but to get into those schools. So I want to make sure I share that with the community, and we'll do an update down the line. And the last part is our middle school principal search. We had 35 people apply for the position. I worked with Mrs. Urquhart, and we did our initial paper screen. I believe we offered 9 interviews, and we had 8 people accept the interview. So we're going to be accepting 8. We're going to be interviewing 8 people for the middle school position. Each of the people who applied are sitting administrators, either assistant principals or principals. We have a great team made up of administrators, central office principals, school committee members. I think we have 2 parents on the committee, and we have about 6 or 7 teachers on the committee. The interviews are scheduled for the 15th, 16th, and 18th of next week. At the conclusion of that, I've asked the committee to forward 3 finalists to me. And then what we're going to do with the 3 finalists is 2 more rounds of interviews. One round will be a staff forum where they'll meet with staff for about 45 minutes, be able to do a 15-minute introduction to who they are, their values, their beliefs, their thoughts, and then spend 30 minutes doing a Q&A with staff. That'll be the second round. And then the final round, I'll meet with the 3 finalists and make a decision on who the one person will be an extended contract to for the middle school principal. I'm hoping to have this wrapped up before we leave for April vacation, hopefully the first week of April. But I wanted to give everyone an update on our middle school principal search. Any questions on that? All right. And that is it for my report tonight.
Thank you. Moving on to school committee and subcommittee report, accounts payable.
Okay, so I signed warrant 36 school lunch 21 dated March 5th, which was 1 batch in the amount of $1,515.94. I signed warrant 37 school lunch 21 dated March 12th, 2 batches for $3,668.30. Warrant 35 school year 21 dated February 25th, 9 batches for $313,698.71. Warrant 36 school year 21 dated March 4th, 5 batches for $117,727.39. And warrant 37 school year 21 dated March 11th, which was 8 batches for $148,794.21. And there was nothing unusual.
Thank you. And the consent agenda, the 2021-2022 school choice vote.
Correct. So every year we have to make the choice to opt into school choice. So in order for us to be able to advertise, post, and accept applications, I'm going to need a motion to continue with school choice. If you look at the handout, if you start with after I recommend and just read that line, I think that's a good motion. We're just recommending right now at this point that we opt to have school choice. And then in, I believe, May or June, I'll come back to the committee and give a recommendation by grade level of how many numbers we're going to cap school choice at per grade level. But we need this vote to start the process.
Just so I'm 100% clear, this is for the upcoming school year.
This is
we are
for
not
the 21-22 school year. We're
okay.
Yeah, correct.
We don't need any more bodies in the buildings right now.
No.
Okay, thank you.
Care to make a stab at that, Becky?
I don't have the language in front of me, but how about I move to allow Douglas Public Schools to offer school choice for the 2021-2022 school year. Is that good enough?
Motion made by Becky.
Second.
Second by Kelly. Roll call vote.
Becky Charniak, aye.
Kelly Grady, aye.
Julie Mulder, aye.
Brown, aye. Thank you. And now moving on to the 2021-2022 school calendar.
Got it. So in front of you, you have our proposed calendar for the upcoming school year. We put this together based off of last year's calendar. We met as a leadership team and looked at it. I also shared it with Mr. Reardon, the president of the DTA, for his approval. So we've gone through all those steps. Now I just need the school committee's approval on the FY22 or the 21-22 school year calendar for us to be able to publish it and post it.
Can I ask you a question about that?
Sure.
I know last year, Mr. Bell and Mrs. Sosha had talked to us about possibly adding a professional development day. I think I only saw 2 on the proposed calendar. Are we considering adding any additional days? And then my follow-up question is, I know that I'm going to hear this from parents. It's awkward how Veterans Day is on a Thursday and then everybody's back to school on a Friday. So if we add another professional development day, that might be a neat place to put it.
Okay. So Veterans Day is one of those holidays that we celebrate on the day where Columbus Day is always the Monday. But yes, it might be a good place to put a full day PD if we need to move it.
Okay.
There. I'll have John and Cindy answer the question about the half days.
Oh, that's right. It was 2 half days, I think.
Correct.
Okay.
All right. The reason we asked for the 2 half days is because we were putting in a new program, the ST Math, and it was going to be training days in the afternoons. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else?
Yes, I have a question. So this comes up a lot, and I know it's come up in the past in regards to February vacation. I know it's a union issue that we have to go through the union first, but I'm going to put it out there again. Do we need February vacation, especially due to the fact that these kids missed a lot of school this past year, like in school learning? We have a lot of ground to make up. I know we had done something last year where we kind of did a couple of days for like a vacation. Any thoughts on that?
I do have some thoughts on it. So if we eliminated the February vacation and went to school, we're only mandated to be in school 180 days. So if we were going to go beyond the 180 days to 185 days, which is what, if we didn't end, if we kept our last day of school at June 17th and we went to school during February break, we'd be going to school for 185 days, not 180 days. The state requirement is 180 days, and teachers are scheduled to teach kids for 180 days. So if we eliminated February vacation and went to school and kept the same day, that would be something that we would have to bargain with the DTA for extending their work year from, I believe, 183 and a half days to 188 and a half days.
Well, I meant not adding days. I meant just ending school earlier in June. I personally don't care. I'm just saying that I know every year it comes up, and by the time people discuss it, it's like it's too late. You can't have that discussion. We've already done the calendar. So I'm putting it out there now.
Okay.
Personally, I don't care.
Yeah. Has a discussion happened here about eliminating February and going? Okay.
I think last year when I don't even remember now because of COVID why we did that.
Okay.
Well, a lot of people always ask for it. They always say, well, how come there's other districts? Because there are other districts that don't have February vacation, or they eliminate it. I want to say I know Rhode Island, but I could be wrong on Rhode Island, but I don't know.
I know, I don't know of any school districts, public school districts in the Commonwealth that have done. I know some other districts in other states have gone to a March break, and then what they've done is they've extended Thanksgiving a couple extra days, and they've extended another long weekend a couple extra days, but they're still going their 180 days. Yes, Cindy Sosha.
Years ago, I don't remember how many, there was a parent survey on that, and it came back overwhelmingly that people wanted to keep the February and the April. So, it'd be a thought to send out another survey and see where parents' minds are on that again.
Any other questions? Not, I'll be looking for a vote to approve the Douglas Public Schools 2021-2022 school calendar.
Well, wait, don't we want to do a survey and see, or is that?
Are we gonna hold it?
Yeah.
We also have the option to amend it later if we make a change.
I think people would like to know when school starts next year.
I'll put a survey together and get it out, and then if we need to amend based off of that, we can do that.
Is that good?
Mm-hmm.
If so, be looking for a motion to approve the Douglas Public Schools 2021-2022 school calendar.
So moved.
Motion made by Becky.
Second.
Second by Heather. Roll call vote.
Becky Charniak, aye.
Kelly Grady, aye.
Julie Mulder, aye.
Heather Moore and I.
Lisa Brown, aye. Thank you. Okay, moving on to the school business and operations managers report.
I don't have any transfers or reclassifications this evening. I do have, I will have some for next week, to get the FY 2021 budget updated, and also have your general fund budget report as well, along with the FY22.
Thank you. Does anybody have any topics not anticipated? Seeing none, we have no need for executive session. We do have a meeting next week and public hearing on April 7th, and I will be looking for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn at 9:16 p.m.
Motion made by Kelly.
Second.
Second by Becky. Roll call vote.
Becky Charniak, aye.
Kelly Grady, aye.
Julie Mulder, aye.
Heather Moore and I.
Lisa Brown, aye. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great
Good night,
night.
all.
Thank you.
Take a night.
Thank you, everyone.